Hello and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff. Yeah, we did it. We did it all in sync last time, and I was like, we got to get the timing right. I was really impressed when that happened last week.
Yeah, that was kind of.
We did it again, and when I listened back, I was like, that's got to become a regular thing. But hey, listen. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to our co-host. I'm Alex Williams. I'm running this shindig today, and today I'm joined by Nick Laporte. Say hi.
Hello, and welcome back, everybody.
See, I really tripped Ethan up because I almost said Ethan first. Ethan was ready to roll, but Ethan Myers, it's your go. Ethan is just very, very stoic. We've got here in the live chat, Jen, the first message in the live chat today. Hey, realizing I haven't asked a question yet, please stand by. Jen has asked the question, I think, almost every single episode of the podcast that we've had ever. And so we will stand by. Don't worry, Jen. We won't wrap up the show before you've asked one of your, actually, honestly, always very interesting and insightful questions. But if you want to join Jen in the live chat, you can go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. And for as little as $1 a month, you can hop on the live stream on Wednesday afternoons, evenings, depending on what time zone you're in. But alas, we got things to talk about. We got urbanism to say. Ethan Myers is gone, but that's okay. We'll keep on rolling here. Nick, do you have an update?
Yeah, it's a quick little update about the bike lane situation in Toronto, Ontario. And I'm going to go through this quickly. There's been some legal stuff going on, but essentially what's been found out is that the Ministry of Transportation estimates the bike lane removals won't begin until April of 2026 and into 2027, though there's also grumblings that it might happen as early as March 20th this year. So that's just about a week away from today, which is pretty concerning. But there was actually additional documents that have came out. They also showed that the government commissioned a study from construction firm SEMA, which showed that removing the bike lanes on Bloor, Yonge, and University streets would increase collisions by 56%. It led to an increase of cyclists on sidewalks, and that the idea of putting cyclists on secondary roads was not feasible. So yeah, it's just crazy to see that the government themselves had studies that showed that there'd be more collisions after removing the bike lanes, and they're like, yeah, let's just do it anyway. It's all about optics. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is really frustrating because it's like, is this not a, like what are our values, right? I was having this conversation with somebody before, and I was saying that I try to have values-based goals, right? Like, I'm not so committed to things as I am to the value, right? Like the thing that we're trying to do. What are we trying to do? We're trying to reduce collisions. We're trying to improve mobility, increase access to services, to jobs, to friends, family, whatever, right? Those are the values with which we should be building our infrastructure. At least that's my take. And I think a lot of people agree with me. But there are other people who are things based, right? And this can be on both sides of things, right? You meet people who are just really, really obsessed with trams. And I get it. I love trams. But often people who are over obsessed with trams end up missing out on the benefits of buses, right? And so when we're obsessed with doing a specific thing as opposed to accomplishing a goal that we come at with certain values, I think we miss out on doing good, on actually doing what we set out to do.
We have to remember that, right? And I think it always comes back to the thing. Are we about moving XYZ, or are we about moving people and getting people mobile? And that's the thing we need to keep coming back to, because you could say the same thing about bikes. Some bike people are really crazy bike people. I don't think I'm one of those people. I think I'm pretty reasonable. I think we need to have a plethora of options, right? But when you get tunnel vision and you look at only one thing, that's when problems arise.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we don't want to limit ourselves to. We have this multimodal option to choose the best mode that fits a corridor in our cities. And we really should be, exploring those options rather than, being headstrong into one way, and really kind of broadening our range of perspectives as well, too, on which mode is going to be the right choice for which trip.
Yeah. So there is an injunction with this whole bike lane removal thing. It's basically in limbo right now. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to keep tabs on it. And I think we have an update from Ethan.
Yes. So here in Portland, we actually have quite the update to one of our transportation systems here. The Portland Streetcar has, in fact, decided to roll out some new rolling stock. So about a month ago, I brought the news that the Type 6s for our Max Light Rail had decided to roll out into service. But today, Portland Bureau of Transportation has rolled out the PDX Streetcar's newest streetcars in the fleet. So these are some of our new Brookville Liberties that we have rolling in the city. There's only one in service right now, and we currently have 3 in storage that will eventually be rolling out into service. But the plan is to eventually replace the older fleet of streetcars with these Brookvilles, as they can actually run on battery power. And in doing so, by running on battery power, we can actually build extensions into areas that might have been a little bit more difficult to if we were trying to put up wires. So this is kind of the start of the future of the Portland streetcar and its future expansions. So it's kind of exciting to see.
Oh, it's awesome.
Super exciting. I also like the streetcar is adorable. Can you go back to the little video here? The number on the top, in the circle.
Yeah.
I think that's just very, very adorable. Look at that. Look how cute that is.
Yeah, it's a good placement for it, honestly.
Yeah. It's got a good vibe. I like it.
It's a little flat-faced streetcar. Yeah. It's like a bull terrier or a French bulldog of streetcars.
Yeah. I'm happy for you. They're very, very, very adorable. Anything else? Any other updates from anybody? Or are we gonna hop on to the next? You've got a thing you want to say, Nick.
Oh, is this mine? I thought we were going with the Ethan story first. But
does Ethan have a story?
I do have a story, but I guess I didn't paste it on up there. But you know what?
Yeah.
What? We'll get right into it. So for our American viewers out there, you might be familiar, and our Canadian viewers or anybody else might be familiar with a little airline in the United States called Southwest Airlines. You guys familiar with Southwest Airlines at all, or
heard of them?
Heard of them?
I've heard of them.
Well, they were known as a low-cost airline. They still are technically, but they had 2 real advantages to the airline. 1, you could pick your seat on the airplane, and 2, you could get 2 free checked bags to go with you. And as of May 28th, after 50 years of that is no longer the case.
50 years.
50 years, yes. For 50 years, you could pick your seat on the airplane, and bags were flying free. 2 checked bags. But now, that's no longer the case. This has to do a lot with the new ownership group that the airline got. It's a private equity ownership group, which basically just means we're going to suck all the value out of this company and then let it go under, which is what private equity does best. But you know what? Now there's no more free checked bags in the U.S. on airlines unless you have a credit card. However, there is one service that will still let you get free checked bags on it. You guys know what that might be? Any guess?
Is it a train?
It is a train. Amtrak will let you check 2 free bags on pretty much any one of their trains that has checked baggage. And if they don't, they still let you carry 2 carry-on bags and a personal item. So it really just kind of shows our wonderful train network in the U.S. and what it can do for you in terms of travel. So if that route that you're thinking about has a rail alternative, it might actually be a great idea. I've actually heard a lot of different stories of people using Amtrak to actually move. So if you're ever thinking about relocating and you don't want to get the U-Haul, the train is always a great option.
So I have a question about this because, it's seen like in Via Rail in Ontario, or I guess it's in Canada, whatever, but you'd have to like weigh your bags. Is that a thing that Amtrak does?
No, that's not a thing that Amtrak does. I've never seen them do that. And even better is that most of the time it's like $15 or $20 to check your bike on the train.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's so nice.
It's incredibly convenient to be able to do that. They're still kind of like modifying their like rolling stock to be able to take like e-bikes and stuff like that. But it's really kind of an amazing way if you have a lot of stuff and you don't really have like a super like I need to be there now kind of schedule. It's a really incredible way, but it really does show that we need to maybe improve our rail service a little bit more, so that way we can have more of this. I think even Brightline has a better checked bag policy than pretty much every airline out there too. I'm not too familiar with theirs, but pretty much if you're taking the train, it's going to have a much better baggage policy than flying. Plus, of course, you're on via rail.
And even if, we could have a rail system that is a be there now system.
Yeah,
it could be faster, a lot faster than flying.
And, it'll provide that advantage over, the airlines who have been, even in our lifetime, steadily getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm a pretty light traveler. Like Same. I usually only try to bring like a backpack and like a small carry-on essentially. And so I haven't had to like bring large cargo items onto a train. So like, for example, do you know that in any places like in Europe or Asia, is it the same policy essentially when it comes to high speed rail as it is traditional, right?
I think they might be a little bit more restrictive on it. I'm not too certain. I actually haven't traveled, like on high speed rail overseas, but I know at least with Amtrak's Northeast Regional, that's a bit more restrictive on baggage policy. You still get two free overhead bags, which can be up to 50 pounds and basically the same baggage size as what you would see for like under a plane for checking it. So very similar baggage policy.
That's so much stuff.
It is a lot of stuff.
You'd have a hard time getting that.
I remember I've used Southwest to move to different places before. So it is kind of really disappointing to see them go down that path, but at least I still have Amtrak to back up on. Knock on wood, but at least Amtrak is still there.
Honestly, I just feel like this is late stage capitalism, like where the services across the board just keep getting shittier and shittier and more expensive, shrinkflation. This is what we're seeing here in Canada. WestJet just last year, it's something me and my wife noticed once we got to the airport, is that WestJet does not offer free carry-on anymore. You have to pay extra for that, right? They try to frame it as, hey, here's this, you get this cheaper ticket now. Right. But no, it's a way to, increase the price.
And then you got to get the credit card. Got to get the credit card.
Get the RBC WestJet credit card. No, it sucks. We made it work. It's fine, but it's still, it makes it harder, obviously.
Get the Southwest Chase credit card,
Yeah.
Then you'll get your 2 free bags. Or if you pay for the most expensive option.
I'm always fascinated by these decisions that different companies make. And different rail operators, airlines, things like that. The decisions that they make of how much to charge, what do we charge for, how much do we charge for that? And it's kind of this interesting balancing act. And we're going to talk more about that sort of thing later on in the show. I have some interesting things to share with everybody. But it's this decision of like, okay, how are we going to manage this? How are we going to do this? And it really also depends on like, what people are using the service for, right? If most people are using a rail service to commute, right? They're doing day trips, they're doing business, they're probably packing a little bit lighter. But if people are using it more for vacations, then it's, well, okay, now we have so many checked bags, so many bigger bags coming on to the train that we need to start limiting it somehow. And often that's with price discrimination. And I think it's an interesting thing, and I'd be curious to see how their numbers break down and how they go about making these decisions. Because I don't, obviously a business wants to make money. If they can make more money off of you, they will, right? That's part of their numbers process. But I am curious about what numbers they were looking at that said, well, actually, yeah, we'll make this change because, it's better for business, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much every other airline charges for bags, but I think the real motivator to do that was their profitability had slumped a little bit past the pandemic, and so a lot of their investors were kind of screaming at them to get profitability up. So that's kind of the main reason that they made that decision, because they want to charge a little bit more. They want to squeeze every last dime out of their customers, but they'll definitely be squeezing the dime out of the last few people that'll be using the airline, because they kind of just lost everything that was individual about it.
Yeah. I've never heard anything particularly wonderful about Southwest Airlines. So, I guess we'll see. Any final thoughts on that before we go to Nick's story?
Just let's build some trains. That's all.
Let's do it.
With the message we need here.
Yeah. All right, Nick, take it away.
Right. I want to talk about common sense. It's something I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, but I've been stewing on it, and we've had guests in the past. So today I want to talk about common sense and common sense in urbanism. So the first thing I need to ask, because everybody thinks they know what it is, but nobody seems to agree. So first off, I'm going to ask both of you, what is common sense? Please. Alex?
Okay, I'll go first. Common sense, I think, is whatever any one individual decides that they think it is. Honestly, like anybody that you talk to, I know somebody who regularly calls anybody who disagrees with them illiterate. That's like their go-to insult. And I love this person, but there is this like very blanketed, oh, that person's illiterate. Right? Anytime somebody disagrees with them, they're like, is there no common sense in the world? They don't understand anything. They're dumb. And they're, throwing out these insults. I know a few people like that. And I just think like the way that I see the world is a product of the people I'm around and the people that I've been taught by. And so the way that everybody else sees the world is kind of the same way. So that's the way that I see common sense, is that it was never common. Right? Like common sense was never, ever common. Mm-mm. It's just the way that you happen to see the world, the assumptions that you carry with you, the biases that you carry with you. That's my take.
All right. How about you?
Yeah, Ethan? I would say that common sense is sort of just an individual person's perspective of what they believe is the most logical conclusions to answers. Mm-hmm. So common sense is really just kind of going to vary by what anybody could possibly think. And it often is almost a misused term these days, to where people will often say, oh, not everybody thinks about this logical solution the way I do, therefore they lack this specific trait. And so common sense is often, at least in my mind, just this sort of like individualistic view of how everybody should be thinking.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay, well, we'll get back to this. I'm going to go through a few things here because I love it. These great answers. So on the dictionary, it just says good sense and sound judgment in practical matters. As simple as that. It's basically just good judgment. That's all it is. But there's a sociology PhD. His name is Duncan Watts. There's a video on YouTube. It's The Myth of Common Sense, Why Everything That Seems Obvious Isn't. It's a fantastic video. I think it's with the Santa Fe Institute. It's like almost 2 hours long. It's a lecture. Very interesting. But what he says is that common sense is what we rely on to navigate concrete everyday situations. It's essentially the unwritten rules of society. And if you're not part of that society, you're not going to know and understand that common sense. So examples that he gives is getting in an elevator and facing the people who are already in the elevator instead of turning around and facing the door. You'd say that person doesn't have common sense. They don't know that rule. It'd be really weird if somebody did that. Or if you tipped a friend after having dinner at their house. That's something you do at a restaurant, but at a friend's house, that might be even considered rude if you did that.
Yeah.
So those are some examples of that. But what really wanted me to bring this, or why I wanted to bring this, was something I saw when I was listening to the WAN show, which is Linus Tech Tips YouTube page. Maybe one of you can bring this up and play it on the screen here, because I'm not sure how to do that right now.
Do you having technical issues?
Yeah. So he was talking
here,
about.
I'll get it up. I'll get it up as you cue us.
So he was talking about computer parts, and there's a particular problem that's happening with GPUs right now, graphics cards and computers, and how it was an obvious fix. Everybody says this is an obvious fix. What the heck are you doing? And he kind of gives us a nice prompt on what that means and how that relates to common sense. So hopefully Alex can pop it up here in a quick second.
Here we go.
And again, I'm not an engineer, but it just seems obvious. And it's one of those things where not only does it seem obvious, because sometimes science is a funny little bitch sometimes, where something can seem very obvious to the layperson, but when you get into the actual science of it, that seemingly obvious explanation is totally stupid, right? But not only did this seem obvious at the time, but it has worked out.
That's good.
It was bad.
So yeah, what he said there, I loved it. He said, what something appears very clear to the layperson, but when you actually dive into the actual science, that seemingly obvious explanation turns out to be completely wrong. And Luke says there at the end, I don't know if you heard that, but he said there's a fair amount of that. And he's completely right. So common sense is very useful. It's just this common concrete world rules that we kind of understand for the most part and use on a daily basis. And the problem that arises here is when we try to apply common sense, or what we think is common sense, to complex systems. In reality, what I think is happening is folks are doing is conflating intuition with common sense. And I think that's what Ethan's answer was. And I think what most answers are from when I ask people about this, it's actually intuition that they're conflating with common sense. And that intuition is often misguided. So here's some examples. Maybe you guys have examples of common sense in urbanism, but here's some that I thought of. So choosing to meet a friend for a walk in a quiet neighborhood or a natural setting like a park instead of next to a busy road. That seems like common sense. When you get on a bus that is nearly empty, you don't sit right next to the only other person on the bus. You sit away from them. That would be kind of weird if you sat right next to them. Or on maybe you common sense, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yes, this one's for Alex here. One that maybe should be common sense, but sadly is not all that common, is feet first, right? Pedestrians should have priority, and we should have a more pedestrianized world, walkable world. People know that's a good place to be. So on the other side of that, what things aren't common sense in urbanism that get conflated to be common sense, and these ones we've talked about on this podcast quite a bit, is that parking should be free. You'll hear that. It's common sense. Parking should be free. Or how about this? We talked about this, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago. 50 people aren't going to the same place. So mass transit isn't viable or convenient.
One more lane.
And that's exactly what I was going to say next. And the classic one more lane bro, that simply adding more space for cars will ease congestion. And its cousin, bike lanes are taking up space and making traffic worse. So we should remove them. It's basically ignorant to complex systems in which we navigate our cities. So that's what's happening. People say common sense, common sense, common sense. This is huge in politics right now. And if you've been paying attention a while, you see it all the time where people try to take their intuitions and apply it to complex systems and call it common sense. In reality, when you actually dig down under the surface, you realize, like Linus said, it's bull crap. So that was just my soapbox today to talk about common sense. And I'm glad I got that off my chest. Please.
I like this, and I'm going to say two common sense things that urbanists often are into, that people in our sphere, in our little echo chamber, are often into. And number one is free transit.
Ooh.
This is something I hear a surprising amount of people who are fans of. And I admittedly, when I first heard about it, I'm like, yeah, that would be wonderful, right? But free transit is kind of like free parking, right? Like it doesn't work exactly the same way, but it's kind of like, I think there's a misunderstanding there about how the system, these complex systems you're talking about, Nick, how they actually work. And so free transit, what has been found, and I was talking to a transit planner friend of mine, what's been found is that when you make transit free, all you do is make it so that people who were walking will take the bus more. Free transit doesn't make people who drive take the bus more. Free transit doesn't make cyclists take the bus more. Free transit make people who walk already take the bus more, which is kind of interesting. And then it doesn't really increase the ridership. It doesn't really increase the service of the system, right? Because now your dollar isn't going as far. I do, however, think that people should be able to get low-income transit passes. We've talked about that on the show. There should be some opportunities like that. But for somebody like myself, I can pay for the $118 a month pass. I can pay for that. And so why wouldn't I support my transit system? So that's one of them. The other one, this is an interesting one that I didn't learn until recently. It's that the standing on the right of the escalator and letting people walk past on the left isn't necessarily the most efficient use of the escalator, and it increases the need for maintenance of the escalator. I thought that was an interesting.
Oh, wow.
That's wild. I didn't know that second part. That's wild.
Yeah, because, well, what happens is you've got 2x2, right? But on one side, there's just a steady weight pushing down on that side of the escalator. And then every now and then somebody comes along and presses down on the other side.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that you wear the escalator unevenly and in kind of a weird pattern. And then it needs to be more maintained more often. And on top of that, with escalators, often because you're supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to line up on the right side of the escalator, you create a single file line at the escalator. I don't know if you guys have seen this at any transit stations and stuff, but you create a single file line waiting to get onto the escalator. Meanwhile, the whole left side is empty because there aren't that many people walking down it.
I see that in Japan a lot.
Yeah. And so apparently, I've been told, I haven't seen this myself, but I've been told that in some places in Japan, they're starting to do a campaign to just stand on the escalator, just get on 2x2, stand on the escalator, because it costs a lot in maintenance. So those are some common sense things that we think about that we might even be fans of ourselves. And I certainly was before I learned that, well, maybe not a great idea.
Yeah. We need to look and test our systems, do the science. And here Willie says in the chat here, anecdotes are along the same line of thinking. They aren't science. And that's what it is. It needs to be science. And really, this whole thing was just for me to say, this is basically feelings over facts. And I'm glad that, Alex, you brought up these things in the urbanist circles, the things that we might have been fans of. When you look under the surface, same thing. You might find that it's not as obvious.
Yeah, there's also another one too here. Zipper merges. A lot of people really find them rude, and they will tell you to get over, like a mile or two earlier. I know that this is a real car thing here, but if you actually want to have the highest throughput when you have to close a lane, taking the lane all the way until it ends and merges over is significantly better for throughput and reduces, backup on a road better than merging, a mile or two early comparatively.
Yeah.
And that's why agencies always, promote zipper merges and not, merging in a mile early.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah. And that's the thing you're talking about, promotion. We have to actively promote these things, because as much as once you learn about it, you're like, oh yeah, of course that makes sense.
And if you're trying to promote it, you almost seem like an asshole, because either you're the guy blocking the elevator or you're the guy who's trying to get in at the last second.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, sorry, do you have anything else to say about that?
Yeah, no, we'll wrap us up and then we'll go on to the next thing here.
I just want to say thank you for listening to me on that. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders and I can finally breathe. But yeah, definitely check out this video if you're interested in the idea of common sense. Yeah. Duncan Watts goes into depth about that. Like, he studies this crap. He's a sociologist. Very interesting, but it's the myth of common sense, why everything that seems obvious isn't. I'll put the link in the description.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that, Nick. Our next story comes to you from me. I'm talking about the Alberta Rail Master Plan. I cannot tell you how stoked I am for this. I went on, I think, was it Monday? I went to an engagement talking about the master plan for Alberta. And they asked, we could ask questions of the people working on the project. We could see some of the vision, some of the ideas behind it. We could provide feedback. One of the particular things of feedback that we were able to give was how much should fares cost? One of the feedback options was how much should it be a crown corporation versus being privately operated? So it was really interesting. And they had this, I want to show everybody this. They had this little ticket that you could take around to the different stations. And at each station, you could get a little hole punch in your ticket at this open house. And I thought that was a super cute idea. So the different stations were Indigenous engagement, background and overview, a future that runs on rail, work to date, and next steps. So this was a fantastic engagement. You can see kind of this master plan that we've got up on the screen here, kind of the vision. This is the 60-year vision that the province has. And of course, that 60-year vision is subject to change as, population changes and different people move different places, priorities change. But yeah, you've got Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray in the north, Medicine Hat and Lethbridge in the south. And then, of course, you've got the Mountain Park connections. and Calgary and Edmonton being a major connection. One thing that isn't shown here that was shown on a big board was future connections to other provinces, Saskatchewan and British Columbia, as well as potential connection to Montana. So I thought it was really cool that with this vision, they're saying, really, how big can we go? How much can we do? And I'm over the moon about this. Of course, they're starting with the 15-year plan. They have a 60-year vision, and then they narrow that down to, okay, what are we going to do in the next 15 years to get the work started on this? And top priority, obviously, probably going to end up being the more local connections, the commuter rail that you can see for Edmonton and Calgary, but then also the regional rail connecting our two biggest cities here in Alberta. So yeah, I am super stoked for this.
Yeah, honestly, like even just the airport connection is huge, and I absolutely love rail that goes to the airport. It's like, it's my favorite way to leave the airport. Like, how could it not be? It's so nice.
Yeah.
So I hope at least that gets built. Like, oh, it's gonna be great. Yeah,
this is going to be super beneficial to a lot of those smaller communities as well too. I mean, like cities like Grand Prairie and Fort McMurray getting actual rail service, something that these communities haven't gotten in decades, and would be absolutely beneficial to providing them to connections to major communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a huge deal. I mean, even just connecting Calgary to Edmonton, you have captured like 72% of Alberta's population, which is a pretty huge deal. And I mean, pretty easy. Like if any jurisdiction could say, oh, you mean I can connect 72% of our population with a single line? Like, that's a win. That is a huge win. And so we have a great opportunity here to do something fantastic. But yeah, we don't need to spend too much time on this. I know we've got to have a shorter episode today, but we can go on to our listener mail. Nick, do you want to take this first one?
Indeed. This first one here comes from Jen Hall, one of our favorites here, friend of the show. What's the most awkward thing you've had to carry by foot, micromobility, or transit? Ooh. I think I have to go with the one that was recent. I actually put it on my Instagram as just like a story or whatever. I carried a bag of cat food, like a 4-kilo bag of cat food on my bike, just holding it. And that's what prompted me to get the saddlebags, the panniers. So yeah, that'll probably be the one for me.
Yeah. What about you, Ethan?
Yeah. I mean, I've carried like trees and stuff like that, on like transit and stuff. So that's all, like little like small plants and stuff. It's just always interesting whenever you're the one walking on with the weirdest item onto the train, especially in Portland. You're the weirdest one walking onto the Max. Always an interesting competition to win. Yeah,
that's honestly impressive. Honestly impressive if you can have the weirdest thing on Portland Transit, I feel like. For me, I'm going to have to say just a simple grocery bag on an e-scooter. E-scooters are not really designed to carry anything other than you with a backpack on your back. I've tried carrying grocery bags in multiple different ways on the front of my e-scooter. I don't ride my e-scooter too often, but every now and then it's pretty easy to zip to the store and back, but definitely do it with a backpack. It's pretty awkward to carry it on the front like that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And this is like always the great reminder to show people how much you can carry on a cargo bike. This was in Utrecht, in the Netherlands, like seeing this guy carry, I don't even know what it is, like a bunch of
looks like
IKEA groceries.
IKEA
yeah,
stuff.
It looks like he did an IKEA haul.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff. You can carry so much on a cargo bike. I think even people who are bike people, even myself, don't realize how much crap you can actually carry.
Did that person give you a little wave in the video?
Oh yeah, he saw me like filming it.
Yeah.
But like even when I got the panniers, I'm still astounded by how much stuff I can fit in there. I was like, I went to the grocery store the one day and I was like, a 4-liter thing of milk and some other stuff. Like the 4-liter thing of milk was like, yeah, duh. Like you could put like almost eight of them in the one bag. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But think about a cargo bike. Like, holy crap.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've shown my panniers on the show before, and one side is kind of like a bucket bag and the other side is a laptop sleeve basically. And so I'm not even operating at like full capacity of what I can put on my bike on the back rack there. But those, like that one half of the pannier, I've picked up stuff for a barbecue where I fed 25 people. I went to the grocery store on my bike, and I picked up plenty of stuff on my bike. But much more comfortable to ride with panniers on the back. I think I also had a backpack on, but that adds to the capacity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one, Ethan? You got something to say?
Yeah. I mean, you'll always end up carrying weird stuff on transit or on your bike, so just be prepared for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And be aware you're not alone. We do it too. Our next question comes from Willie here. And I'll say both Jen and Willie asked these listener questions in the live chat today. If you want to join the live chat, go to patreon.com/radiofreeurbanism. Join for as little as $1 a month. And you get sweet perks like joining our Discord and joining our live chat here on Wednesdays as we record. Willie, I'm gonna censor your question a little bit because it's kind of it's a little
it's not gonna be liked by the algorithms.
I'm gonna say this in a little bit nicer of a way, which is, what should be their consequences, or should there be consequences for politicians who create policies and enact policies that result in the unnecessary deaths of innocent people? And Willie says, LOL, I don't blame you. Let's start with Ethan. Have you thought about this at all?
You know what? Just for my safety, I'm just not even going to answer this one.
Hey, you said consequences.
I can see the question though. I'm just gonna just gonna leave that one blank there. You'll know my answer if you know me.
I think there should be consequences. This is something we saw in Toronto. I think this is in reference to that, really, is that the Ontario government, before taking out the bike lanes and after signing the bill saying they're going to take out bike lanes, that they would have a bill that says they would prevent injured cyclists from suing Ontario over bike lane removal, which is like, obviously, because they knew that more people would be injured, not just cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers too. You should absolutely be responsible for that. Like, this is completely negligent. Like, that's what it is. It's completely negligent. And for you not to be responsible for that is insane. What world are we living in? Yeah.
And I think this is something really interesting. I know the Netherlands actually has rules about this sorts of thing. That's why their roads are so nice, is because of the liability that falls back on whoever is in charge of taking care of the roads. But here in North America, when we talk about urbanism, I mean, obviously on this show, when we talk about, the deaths of innocent people, we tend to talk about this in the context of traffic collisions, right? This is often what we talk about, is pedestrians being hit by people driving cars. It also can be applied to, our education systems, our housing systems, all of these other systems. But in the context of transportation, I think this is something that a lot of politicians don't even think that much about, but really should. And they might think about it when there's a moment that comes up, when something happens in their neighborhood, when a kid gets hit by a car, by somebody driving a car, and it's all over the news, and then they have to go on the news and say something about it. But we really don't do enough about it. And I think that's where that responsibility comes in. How you would hold somebody liable for that, I don't really know. Like, what can you do? But I think the bottom line is that we know how to make safe driving infrastructure. We know how to make safe walking infrastructure. We know how to make safe cycling infrastructure, and we know how to create safe transit, right? We know how to do these things, and yet we time and time again choose not to. We know that we could have nearsighted signal lights at our intersections. We know that we could do that, but we don't. We know the benefits of them. We know the benefits of creating infrastructure that encourages good behavior and discourages bad behavior. We know how to do that. But time and time again, we just put up a sign and say, please slow down. You've probably seen some of those little yellow guys out in your neighborhood that, have a little flag crossing, right? They just stand out like that. And that doesn't do anything. That's not actually deterring anything. If somebody was going to keep the rules based on their own desire to, there are children in this area. People know there are kids in the area. People know there are kids in the community. And the only thing that is going to actually make it so that we have safe infrastructure is to build safe infrastructure. Like, that's how you do it. That's how you create safe opportunities for people, no matter what mode they're choosing to use, whether that's walking, biking, driving, or using transit. You create safe systems. I mean, we see that with the airline industry. We talk about this again and again and again, the way that they go over every single detail. And I just think, what are the consequences? I don't know, but I do think that our politicians need to take these problems way more seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
But back to what you said about, like, we have these options. They're there. It's insane that we don't, but I think that's because it's inherently political. As much as we don't want to be, and it shouldn't be, a lot of this stuff should be bipartisan. It's political. I think that's what it is. A lot of time.
I'll say, somebody was telling me about some effect. I forget what it's called. Let me see if I can pull it up here in our messages. He was talking about the pluralistic ignorance. So when people often think that they are in a minority of people who think something, but they're actually in the majority. The majority of people do think that we need safe infrastructure. The majority of people do think that. And so, let's not kid ourselves and pretend like everybody's out to do this, but out to create dangerous infrastructure. People want safe infrastructure, and I think we just need politicians willing to actually, make our cities a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
So this was fun. This was a fun conversation. Final thoughts as we wrap up here. Anything else to say?
I just wanted to say that we are going to be changing the format of the show slightly. So when we have new guests on, especially, we're going to be front loading the show with them and what we're talking about with them. As I listened back to the last episode with Tom, it's just kind of an awkward format where we introduce them briefly and then kind of go into the news and stuff, and then don't give them a chance to really engage. So I think it'll be better if we swip that around so that they get, the front of the episode, and then we talk about any news or extra stuff we want to discuss. Yeah.
Excellent.
And
by the way, if you have any suggestions on the show formats, on the YouTube channel, on the audio format, let us know. We're curious what we can do better or what you like. Yeah.
Yeah. We want to know. We want to know. Ethan, anything else to say, or do you want to just wrap
You know what? I want to say one thing. Thank you to all of the people in the wonderful live chat today. We've got Jen, Willie, and Skitch here today. Those are our wonderful patrons who have joined in for the live chat. And not only that, they get access to the show early if they can't make the live chat, and access to our Discord for just how much, Alex?
$1 a month.
$1 a month for just $1 a month. So if you want to do that, get access to the show. We're live every Wednesday afternoon. You can absolutely join us. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in and watching Radio Free Urbanism. Alex, where can the good people find you?
The good people can find me on YouTube and Instagram at Humane Cities, or you can follow me for more campaigny stuff at Alex Williams YYC on pretty much everywhere. Oh, Nick.
Oh, me. Hey, I'm still here, guys. My name is Nick Laporte. You can find me at Nick the Door on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky. And with that, Ethan, take us away.
Folks, you can find me over at Climate and Transit on pretty much every platform. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, train good, car bad.
2 wheels good.
And feet first.